The Duchess of Midnight Part 1. Chapter 1, The Arrival at Ravensmoor. The year was 1763, and the moors of Yorkshire were cloaked in fog so thick it clung to the bones. The carriage wheels groaned over the uneven road as Alessia Holden peered through the cracked glass, her gloved hands clenched around a small leather satchel containing all she owned in the world. She was 21. Poor. Alone. And now, bound for a post at Ravensmoor Hall, a place whispered about in the village with fear and fascination. The driver refused to go all the way to the estate. "Won't get closer than this, miss," he said, eyes shifting nervously. "Place goes dark by daylight." "That ain't natural." Alessia stepped down and faced the long, winding path through the moors. Ravensmoor Hall emerged from the fog like a phantom, massive, ivy-covered, and disturbingly silent. The butler, Mr. Withrow, opened the great oak door without a word. He was tall and gaunt, with eyes like wet stone. "You'll be shown to your quarters," he said. "You'll teach Miss Cora by day. You'll not wander after sundown. The west wing is forbidden. His Grace is not to be disturbed." "His Grace?" Alessia asked. "The Duke of Blackmere," he said. "Nicholas Ravensmoor." The name carried an echo, one she couldn't quite place. Her room was plain but warm. A fireplace crackled, and a single painting of a pale woman in a silver gown hung above the bed. There was something strangely familiar about her face. Alessia shivered. That night, as she lay in bed, the wind howled against the shutters. Somewhere in the hall, a clock struck midnight. And then, she heard footsteps. Soft. Purposeful. Passing right outside her door. She slipped from bed, curious despite herself. The hallway was dark, lit only by wall sconces. As she peeked through a crack in the door, she saw the silhouette of a man, tall, dressed in dark finery, moving with impossible grace. He disappeared down the west wing. Her heart beat faster. The Duke. She hadn't seen his face, but something about his presence, it was magnetic, like the air itself had shifted. She closed the door and pressed her back against it. "Not to be disturbed," she whispered. "So why does he walk only at night?" Chapter 2, The Man in the Shadows. Morning came to Ravensmoor Hall with the grey reluctance of winter. Mist still clung to the windows like a warning that sunlight was not welcome here. Alessia Holden dressed modestly and made her way to the small classroom in the east wing, where her new charge, Miss Cora, awaited her. The child was delicate and pale, with hair the color of ash and wide, watchful eyes. "I don't like the west wing," Cora said softly during Latin practice. "Why not?" "That's where the Duke sleeps," Cora whispered. "He's not like other men." Later, during a solitary walk through the south garden, Alessia encountered Mrs. Tyburn, the housekeeper, arranging dead flowers into vases. "You'll not see his Grace much," the woman said without turning. "He keeps to himself. Always has. You do well not to ask questions." "But he walks the halls at night," Alessia replied. Mrs. Tyburn's hands stilled. "He has his reasons." That night, the hallways seemed darker than before. Alessia couldn't sleep. Drawn by something she couldn't name, she stepped from her room and wandered down the main corridor. The west wing stood like a shadowed sentinel at the end of the hall, its doors shut like the mouth of a secret. But in the drawing room beside it, the fire was lit. There, by the hearth, stood Nicholas Ravensmoor. He wore a long dark coat, his black hair falling just below his collar. He turned as she entered, his face sharply handsome, too handsome, with eyes like polished obsidian. And yet, something in his expression seemed hollow, as though he lived 1,000 lifetimes in silence. "Miss Holden," he said, his voice low and musical. "You wander the halls?" She curtsied, flustered. "Forgive me, Your Grace. I couldn't sleep." "I never do," he replied. A pause. Their eyes met. "You resemble someone," he said. "Someone I knew, a very long time ago." Alessia's breath caught. "Who?" But Nicholas only smiled faintly, like a man who had learned to swallow every truth. "She's long dead." Before she could respond, he stepped closer. Not threatening. Not cruel. Just, utterly still. "You should return to your room, Miss Holden. The night has teeth." She nodded slowly and turned away. As she reached the door, he spoke again, so softly she barely heard it. "But not all teeth draw blood." Back in her chamber, Alessia sat awake for hours, staring at the portrait above her bed. The woman's eyes looked back with knowing sadness. And far below in the crypts, Nicholas Ravensmoor stood in the dark, watching the flames in the fireplace dance like memories. Chapter 3: The Portrait and the Past. The next morning arrived with a storm. Rain lashed against the high windows of Ravensmoor Hall as if trying to scrape its way in. Alessia Holden awoke unrest, her thoughts still tangled in the strange conversation from the night before. Nicholas Ravensmoor was unlike any man she'd ever met. Still, composed, and lonely. Terribly lonely. During her midday break, curiosity pulled her back to a long-abandoned gallery on the second floor. The room was cold, the floorboards creaking beneath her shoes. Portraits of ancestors lined the walls, Ravensmoors from centuries past, their eyes dull with forgotten pride. And then she saw it. At the far end of the gallery stood a life-sized painting, faded and cracked with age. A woman in a silver gown with long dark hair and alabaster skin. Her hands clasped a crimson rose. Her expression was serene, but her eyes were unmistakable. They were Alessia's. Footsteps behind her. She turned quickly to find Mrs. Tyburn, dusting. "That's Lady Althea Holden," the housekeeper said without prompting. "Lived here over 200 years ago. Some say she bewitched the Duke of the time." Alessia frowned. "She has my face." "I." "Holden blood strong," the woman muttered, not quite meeting her eyes. "But you'll not want to mention that too loudly. There's bad luck in that name." "What happened to her?" Mrs. Tyburn hesitated, then whispered. "She was burned as a witch." Later, Alessia returned to the gallery alone and stood before the portrait. The resemblance was no coincidence. Her mother had spoken little of their ancestry, and nothing of noble connections. Who was Lady Althea really? And why did the Duke, Nicholas Ravensmoor, say she resembled someone from long ago? A voice echoed from the door. "You've found her." Nicholas stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "She was someone I cared for," he said softly. "Once." "Who was she to you?" Alessia asked. Nicholas stared at the painting, and his voice, when it came, was nearly a whisper. "She betrayed me." Chapter 4: The Howling at the Window. That night, the wind returned, stronger than before. Alessia Holden lay in bed as the shutters rattled and the great halls of Ravensmoor Hall groaned like a restless beast. She couldn't sleep. Not after seeing the portrait. Not after hearing Nicholas Ravensmoor utter those three heavy words, "She betrayed me." Sometime after midnight, Alessia rose and crossed to the tall window beside her bed. The fog outside had thickened, crawling across the moor like living mist. Then she heard it. A low, feral howl, long and mournful, rising from the cliffs below the estate. Her breath caught. In the moonlight, she saw a figure below. A large black wolf, its eyes glowing faintly red. It limped across the grounds, trailing what looked like blood in its wake, stopping to look directly up at her window. Her blood ran cold. Then, movement in the hallway. She opened her door just a sliver and peeked out. There, once more, strode the figure of Nicholas, clothed in black, his long coat flowing behind him like shadows given form. He walked not like a man, but like something born of the night. He vanished into the west wing, the forbidden wing. The next morning, at breakfast with Cora, Alessia tried to focus on her lesson, but the child noticed her distraction. "You saw the wolf," Cora said. Alessia froze. "What do you know about it?" "He comes when his grace is hurting," Cora murmured. "That's what Mrs. Tyburn says." "But why?" Cora looked around, then leaned in. "They say the Duke talks to the wolves. That he feeds them." Later, Alessia found herself summoned to the library. Nicholas waited inside, as silent as ever. "Is something wrong, Your Grace?" she asked, voice steadier than she felt. "I felt you were troubled last night," he said. Alessia looked into his eyes. "There was a wolf outside my window. Bleeding." Nicholas's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. "There are old creatures in these lands," he said simply. "You should not leave your room at night." He turned away, as if to end the conversation, but Alessia couldn't let it rest. "You told me Althea betrayed you. Did she curse you?" Nicholas didn't answer. Instead, he said one word, heavy with finality. "Leave it." That night, Alessia dreamed of wolves howling in a burning field. Of a woman, Althea herself, standing at a stone altar. And of Nicholas, eyes glowing with sorrow, whispering her name. Chapter 5: The Baron's Arrival. 3 days passed. The weather remained grim, as if the very sky over Ravensmoor Hall mourned something it could not name. Alessia Holden continued her duties quietly, but the tension in the air was undeniable. She hadn't spoken to the Duke since the night of the wolf. But she felt his presence in the halls, even when she didn't see him. Especially when she didn't see him. On the 4th morning, a letter arrived by Raven. A rare event, according to Mr. Withrow, who read the crest with visible discomfort. Alessia was in the drawing room helping Miss Cora with her penmanship when she heard the conversation just beyond the door. "Didn't think he'd ever return," the butler muttered. "Especially not after what happened," whispered Mrs. Tyburn. Then, footsteps. The front doors creaked open. A voice, rich and effortlessly amused, echoed down the stone corridor. "Well then, haven't the shadows grown longer since I left?" Alessia was summoned to meet the visitor formally in the front parlor. She entered to find a man leaning against the hearth, nursing a glass of deep red wine. Baron Thorn Ashcroft. He stood with the relaxed confidence of someone who knew he was beautiful. Hair the color of honeyed chestnut, eyes like green glass, and a smile that could melt locked doors. His clothing was impeccable, with a subtle red silk cravat that suggested more than wealth, flair. When he saw Alessia, he straightened and gave a small, dramatic bow. "You must be Miss Holden. My condolences." "For what?" she asked, uncertain. "For being trapped here among stone, mist, and that unflinching brooder who calls himself a duke." Her cheeks flushed. "His Grace has been very kind." "Oh, I'm sure," Thorn replied, lips twitching. "They always are, until the teeth come out." He sipped. "Do forgive me. I have a flair for theatrics." Later that evening, Thorn joined the household for dinner, an unusual break from Ravensmoor's near-silent routine. The Duke arrived after sundown, his expression unreadable as always. They greeted one another like men who once fought side by side, and now fought not to strike one another. "Thorn. Nicholas." The conversation was civil, but beneath it, there were daggers. Thorn mentioned an old hunting trip. Nicholas deflected. Thorn joked about Nicholas's aversion to sunlight. Nicholas countered with mention of thorns, flair for charming governesses. Alessia sat in uneasy silence between them, sensing a storm brewing under velvet words. After dinner, Thorn found Alessia in the winter garden. The roses were dead, but moonlight made the frost shimmer like jewels. "Let me guess," he said softly, joining her. "He walks at night. Speaks in riddles. Keeps secrets like breath. He has his reasons." Thorn's expression darkened. "I knew his kind, once. My sister, she trusted one like him. And she died for it." Alessia's breath caught. "Are you saying he's?" "I'm saying you should be careful." He stepped closer. "You're smart. But you're also dangerous, to him." "Why?" "Because he's a man cursed by love. And you, Miss Holden," he touched the edge of her hair, not quite a caress. "You look like the woman who damned him." Back inside, Nicholas stood at the top of the grand staircase, watching from the shadows. His expression unreadable. But his fists were clenched. Chapter 6, Moonlight Intrusion. The moon rose heavy and white above Ravensmoor Hall, illuminating the fog like a ghost's breath. Alessia Holden had not slept since Baron Thorn Ashcroft's warning. "A man cursed by love. You look like the woman who damned him." The weight of those words pressed on her chest like a stone. It began after midnight. From her window, Alessia saw a single lantern flicker at the edge of the woods. A figure, tall, cloaked, moved deliberately toward the forest that bordered the estate. She recognized the coat, the gait, the silence. The Duke. Compelled by something between terror and longing, Alessia dressed quickly, threw on her cloak, and followed him out into the night. The moorland forest was ancient. Its trees curled like claws, and the wind sounded like whispers between the branches. Alessia followed at a distance, careful not to make a sound. Nicholas moved with supernatural fluidity, as if he were gliding instead of walking. At last, he stopped, beside a clearing ringed with crumbling standing stones, a forgotten ritual site. She watched from behind a tree, heart racing. Nicholas pulled something from beneath his cloak. A small animal, a hare, wounded and limp. He knelt and whispered words in a language Alessia had never heard before. His voice was gentle, melodic, but laced with something ancient. Then his fangs extended. Alessia gasped, too loudly. Nicholas froze. Slowly, he turned his head in her direction. "Miss Holden," he said, not surprised. "You followed me." She stepped into the clearing, trembling. "I had to know the truth." Nicholas looked away, as if ashamed. "I do not harm the innocent," he said. "I feed only enough to survive. Animals. Sometimes, those who deserve worse." She stared. You're a vampire." The word hung in the air like a noose. Nicholas stood. "I was cursed over 200 years ago. The day my soul died was the day the sun rejected me." "Althea Holden," Alessia whispered. "It was her, wasn't it?" A long pause. "I loved her," Nicholas said. "Or I thought I did. But she was not who she claimed to be. She bound me to the night, and vanished before the flames took her." Alessia felt dizzy. "Why? Why would she do that?" "I still don't know," he said. "But I have suffered every day since." He took a slow step toward her. "And then you arrived. With her face. Her name. Her blood." Alessia's breath caught. "I'm not her." "No," he agreed softly. "You're something far more dangerous." "I don't kill," Nicholas said, voice tight. "But Baron Thorn does. He came here with a blade blessed in ash and silver. He would strike me down if he could. And if he knew what you are. What am I? Alessia interrupted, voice trembling. Nicholas looked at her, eyes dark and sorrowful. I don't know. But the blood in your veins sings like hers once did. Only louder. A pause. You should leave Ravensmoor, Alessia. Before your fate becomes mine. She stepped forward. And what if I don't want to? His voice dropped to a whisper. Then I pray you are not what I fear, because I won't survive losing her a second time. They stood inches apart. Mist curled around their ankles. The moon bore witness. I don't know who I am yet, Alessia said, heart pounding. But I know I'm not afraid of you. Nicholas stared at her, his expression unreadable, then vanished, too fast for human eyes. Alessia stood alone in the clearing. She had her answer. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 7, The Choice of Curiosity. The morning after the forest encounter was still and brittle, like a page waiting for ink. Alessia Holden sat at her writing desk in her modest chamber, staring at a letter she had not written. A letter of resignation. It sat blank, unsealed, a ghost of a decision she could not make. She had seen the truth. Nicholas Ravensmoor, Duke of Blackmere, was a vampire. Cursed. Tragic. Dangerous. And yet. She was still here. At breakfast, Miss Cora greeted her with a shy smile. You look pale today, the girl said. Did you go walking again last night? Alessia paused mid-sip of her tea. I couldn't sleep. Cora nodded solemnly. You're like him, then. You don't sleep either. Alessia studied the child's innocent face. Do you, like the Duke? Cora tilted her head. He's sad. But kind. And he always listens. He talks to me like I'm not a child. Alessia smiled faintly. So he could feel love, even now. Later that afternoon, Alessia found herself wandering into the library. It wasn't part of her routine, but something pulled her there, like invisible thread. Nicholas was there already, reading at the long oak table beneath the stained glass window. The way the colored light fell across his features made him look like a morning angel. He didn't speak. Neither did she. She simply sat at the opposite end and opened a book. After a long silence, he said. You stayed. I did. Why? Alessia turned a page without looking at him. Because I'm curious. About the truth. About you. About what you're not saying. Nicholas closed his book slowly. Curiosity has always been dangerous in this house. Alessia looked up, locking eyes with him. So has silence. That night, by firelight in the drawing room, they spoke more freely. Alessia asked about the curse. He explained, cautiously. I do not age. I do not sleep. I do not dream. I taste every heartbeat but live with none of my own. And you've lived like this for 2 centuries? More, he said. There are nights I remember every second. And others. I cannot bear to recall at all. She was quiet, then asked. Have you ever loved anyone since her? Nicholas hesitated, then gave the faintest smile. No one has ever dared stay long enough. Later, Nicholas showed her a hidden room in the West Wing, a place forbidden to the rest of the staff. It was filled with clocks. Dozens of them. All frozen at different hours. Not one ticking. They all stopped, he said softly, the moment I turned. I can't bear the sound of time moving forward when mine has stopped. Alessia looked around in wonder and sorrow. You should destroy them. I've tried. But they always come back. Before they parted for the night, Alessia paused at the threshold of the drawing room. I'm not her, Nicholas. He looked up from the fire. I know. That's what frightens me. She opened her mouth to say something else, something foolish, something true, but chose instead to say nothing and retreat into the quiet of the hall. In her room, Alessia took the resignation letter and burned it in the hearth. She watched it curl into ash. She had made her choice. She would stay. Even if it broke her. Even if it saved him. Chapter 8, The Baron's Confession. Rain came to Ravensmoor Hall not in a storm, but in a slow, ceaseless drizzle that turned the moor into a sea of grey. The days had grown heavier, as though the sky itself shared in the weight of unspoken truths. It had been 3 nights since Alessia Holden had followed the Duke into the forest and learned what he truly was. She had not told anyone. But someone was watching her. And that someone was Baron Thorn Ashcroft. At breakfast, Thorn lounged across from her, a half-smile on his lips as he cut into a scone with unsettling precision. "You're quieter than usual, Miss Holden," he said without looking up. "Lost in dreams, or nightmares?" Alessia didn't flinch. "Some of us don't wear our masks as proudly as others, Baron." He chuckled. Touché. Behind his humor, though, something flickered: concern? Frustration? Whatever it was, it wasn't just charm anymore. Later that afternoon, Alessia entered the conservatory to find Thorn alone among the withering plants, plucking petals from a dying lily. Without turning, he spoke. "Tell me, do you believe in justice, Miss Holden?" "Justice?" she echoed. "Justice for the dead. For those who trusted the wrong people. For those who were devoured by creatures who pretend to love." His voice had lost its playfulness. She stepped closer. "What happened to you, Thorn?" He turned then, and she saw it. Not flirtation. Not smugness. Grief. Rage. Guilt. "My sister," he said quietly, "was named Clara. Beautiful. Pure-hearted. We were close. I left her in the care of a family friend while I traveled abroad. When I returned..." He swallowed hard. "She was dead. Drained. Left in a chapel, arms folded as though she'd gone to sleep." Alessia felt her stomach twist. "Everyone blamed a fever," Thorn continued. "But I found her diary. She'd fallen in love with a man she called the Duke of Midnight." Alessia whispered, "Nicholas." Thorn nodded. He fed on her. Took her love. Her trust. Her life. I swore then I would learn how to kill them. All of them. I trained with monks in the Pyrenees. Learned rituals, blessings, sacred weapons. He pulled a small blade from his coat. The edge shimmered faintly silver in the low light. "This dagger has taken 2 vampires already. I came here to use it on a 3rd. Alessia stared. "And what stopped you?" Thorn hesitated. You're not like Clara," he said. "You're sharp. Curious. You see him for what he is, and yet you stay." Alessia struggled to find words. "I don't think Nicholas meant to harm your sister," she said. "He's not." Thorn stepped forward, suddenly fierce. "He's not what? A killer? A liar? You saw what he is. You know what he's capable of." She stepped back. "He's not the monster you believe," she said quietly. Thorn's expression shifted from anger to something softer, wounded. "Then perhaps, it's you I've misjudged." They stood inches apart, the storm tapping at the glass above. "I came to Ravensmoor to kill a vampire," Thorn said. "Instead, I found you. And now, I can't decide which mission would damn me more." His hand rose, hovered near her cheek, but didn't touch. Be careful, Alessia. You think you're choosing between two men. But you're really choosing between life and something far darker. Then he was gone. From the grand staircase, half-cloaked in shadow, Nicholas Ravensmoor had watched them, expression impassive, hands folded. But his eyes burned. Chapter 9, A Witch's Legacy. The days after Baron Thorne's confession passed in uneasy silence. Alessia Holden found herself drifting through the halls of Ravensmoor Hall like a spectre, watched by one man, haunted by another, and slowly unraveling the threads of a history that felt too familiar to ignore. She had come here to teach a child. She was now caught between a vampire, a hunter, and the growing suspicion that her bloodline held the key to something ancient and terrifying. One evening, while organizing the shelves in the study, Alessia noticed an irregularity in the wall paneling. A thin line barely visible behind the bookcases. Driven by instinct and curiosity, she pulled a collection of tomes from the shelf and felt a small click beneath her fingers. The wall shifted. A secret compartment opened, revealing a black leather-bound book, etched in silver runes. It was old. Cold. Alive. She opened it slowly. Inside, the name Althea Holden was written in the same elegant hand as the letters in the family portrait inscription. This was no ordinary book. It was a grimoire. The first few pages were spells, written in a dialect Alessia somehow understood, though she'd never studied it. Her fingertips tingled as they touched the parchment. The ink pulsed, faintly glowing beneath her touch. And then she found it, a family tree, drawn in faded ink and stretching across 3 pages. Her mother's name. Her grandmother's. And at the very top, circled in red, Althea of the Hollow Flame. A note beside it read. She cursed the Duke, but her line would one day restore him. The flame must return to the night. Alessia backed away from the book. She wasn't just a woman with a coincidental name. She was the last blood of the witch who had cursed Nicholas Ravensmoor. Later that night, Alessia entered the old chapel beneath the hall. No one had used it in years, yet fresh candles flickered as if awaiting her. Nicholas stood near the altar, as if summoned by her thoughts. "You found it," he said without turning. "The grimoire." Alessia stepped forward, voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know," he admitted. "Not for certain. But when I saw your face, I began to hope. And to fear." "Fear what?" "That you might finish what Althea began." She walked toward him, slowly. "My mother never told me what she came from. I thought I was just poor. Alone. Ordinary." "You are many things," Nicholas whispered. "But never ordinary." Suddenly, the chapel's old stained-glass window fractured with a thunderous crack. Wind burst through the space, candles flaring wildly. Alessia cried out and clutched the edge of the altar. A glow spread beneath her skin, a burning, golden light in her chest, her hands, her eyes. She collapsed to her knees. Nicholas was beside her in a heartbeat, but he did not touch her. "This is your inheritance," he said, watching her. "Not just her face. Not just her blood. Her power." Alessia gasped, the magic settling like embers beneath her skin. "What am I becoming?" That night, as she slept, a whisper came in her dreams. "The blood moon rises, and the choice must be made. One life ends. One curse breaks. Flame or shadow, what shall you become?" She awoke in a cold sweat, the grimoire open beside her bed, though she was certain she had locked it away. Chapter 10, The Garden of Shadows. The next day passed like a fever dream. Alessia Holden moved through the hallways of Ravensmoor like someone not entirely tethered to her body. Her hands trembled when she poured tea. Her reflection shimmered unnaturally in the mirror. The heat in her chest, left over from the magic awakening in the chapel, had not faded. She was changing. And no one could know. No one, except him. A note arrived with her midday tray. Come to the South Garden at midnight. No masks. No lies. Just you. N. She read it twice before hiding it beneath a book of Latin verbs. At the stroke of midnight, Alessia stepped outside into the overgrown South Garden, where once grand rose bushes tangled with briars and creeping ivy. The stone path was cracked and broken, but bathed in the pale blue glow of the moon. Nicholas Ravensmoor waited by the dried fountain. His black coat fluttered slightly in the breeze. When he turned, he wasn't the cold Duke of legend. He was just a man, haunted and heartbreakingly still. You came, he said, voice quieter than the wind. I had questions, she replied, stepping closer. But I no longer think I want answers. Not tonight. Nicholas tilted his head. Then what do you want? I want to feel something that doesn't frighten me. Silence stretched. Then stay, he said, a little longer. They walked in silence beneath the half-dead arbor. Fireflies danced around them like fragile stars. Nicholas recited the names of plants long forgotten. Alessia responded with snippets from her grimoire, words that came to her unbidden, like they had been waiting all along. She plucked a rose. It bloomed in her hand, as if time reversed itself for her touch. Nicholas watched, mesmerized. You're already more powerful than she ever was, he murmured. Alessia turned to him. Then why do I feel so lost? Because power without love becomes ruin, he said. And love without choice becomes a curse. She stepped closer. And what are you, Nicholas? His gaze held hers like a confession. I am, waiting. For someone brave enough to stay. There, beneath the moonlight and the dead roses, with the garden suspended in stillness, Alessia stood on her toes and kissed him. Soft. Gentle. Full of ache. Nicholas did not hesitate. He kissed her like he was remembering something he had lost centuries ago. His hand cupped her jaw. Hers found his chest, and in that moment she felt the deep, tragic stillness where his heart no longer beat. And still, she didn't pull away. The kiss broke as a ripple of energy burst through the garden. Vines curled and unfurled. The dried fountain filled with glowing water. Flowers bloomed, wild and luminous, all around them. Alessia stepped back in awe. What did we just do? She whispered. You awakened something, Nicholas said, eyes wide. Not just in yourself, but in the land. In the curse. It's changing. From a distant window of the manor, Baron Thorne Ashcroft watched the garden bloom with impossible life. His grip on the silver-bladed dagger tightened. He turned away without a word. Chapter 11, A Ball in the Abyss. The letter arrived sealed with wax and black ribbon. To celebrate the night of St. Mirella. Ravensmoor Hall shall host a masked ball. Attendance is mandatory. The Duke of Blackmere. Alessia Holden read it 3 times. A ball? At Ravensmoor? It felt like an echo from another century, an impossible indulgence in a house built on silence and shadow. But beneath her dread pulsed something more dangerous, anticipation. The entire manor stirred with activity. Servants dusted chandeliers and polished long-abandoned mirrors. Florists arrived from town with dark orchids, ivy, and silver lilies. Candles were placed in every corridor, each dipped in red wax. Mrs. Tyburn delivered Alessia's gown herself. A gift, she said gruffly. From His Grace. Custom tailored. Alessia lifted the bodice and felt the silk slide between her fingers. Midnight blue. Cold. Perfect. She said nothing aloud, but her heart fluttered at what it meant. When the hour arrived, the house bloomed into eerie splendor. The ballroom, sealed for decades, came to life with music. Gilded masks, velvet cloaks, and glittering gowns swept through the candlelight. Moonlight spilled through stained-glass windows, bathing the dancers in shifting hues. Alessia entered alone, wearing her dark gown and a silver half-mask. Her presence turned heads. Her steps echoed. She was no longer invisible. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Nicholas Ravensmoor appeared at the top of the staircase. His mask was carved like obsidian wings, his black coat tailored like armor. But it was his presence, timeless, magnetic, terrifying, that silenced the room. He descended the stairs like a man from legend, his eyes fixed solely on Alessia. No one dared approach him. Without a word, Nicholas extended his hand. She placed hers in his. The string quartet began a slow, haunting waltz. The floor cleared for them. They moved in perfect synchronicity, as if they had danced this dance 1,000 years ago. "Is this what you remember?" she asked softly. Nicholas's eyes did not leave hers. "No. This is what I never had. Until now." A voice cut through the music. "May I steal her for a turn?" Baron Thorne Ashcroft stepped onto the floor, dressed in deep crimson, his gold mask shaped like a lion's face. He bowed low, mocking yet magnetic. Alessia hesitated. Nicholas released her hand, but his jaw tightened. "You may," she said. They danced. Thorne led with practiced elegance, eyes never leaving hers. "You're becoming something dangerous, Alessia," he said, voice low. "You lit the garden on fire with your love for a vampire. How far will you go for him?" "I don't know," she replied honestly. "But I do," he said. "You'll burn. And when you do, I wonder who'll survive it." As the music swelled, the air in the ballroom grew heavy. Nicholas stood alone, watching them, his expression unreadable but his aura sharp. Cora whispered to Alessia as she passed, "The house feels angry." Candles flickered. Glasses cracked. Thorne returned Alessia to Nicholas, bowing with exaggerated grace. "My thanks, Your Grace. She dances like flame." Nicholas's voice was soft but lethal. "You play with fire, Baron. And you're the one who can't step into the sun." At the stroke of 12, the music stopped. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind burst through the ballroom, snuffing out half the candles. The chandeliers swayed. Everyone froze. Nicholas's eyes darkened. "She's here." "She?" Alessia asked. But Nicholas didn't answer. The air thickened with old magic. The floor beneath them almost seemed to breathe. And from the shadows above the staircase, a figure in a blood-red gown appeared. Her mask was shaped like a burning phoenix. Uninvited. Unannounced. Unnatural. Alessia's blood went cold. Nicholas whispered her name like a curse. Althea. Chapter 12, The Blood Between Them. Althea Holden. The name fell like a blade. The woman at the top of the stairs stood poised and statuesque, clad in a crimson gown embroidered with curling gold flames. Her hair was long and dark, twisted with thorns and rubies. Her mask, shaped like a phoenix, glinted in the candlelight. Every guest in the ballroom turned toward her, mouths parted in shock. They felt it, even if they didn't understand it. She did not belong to this world anymore. And yet, she stood there. Smiling. Nicholas Ravensmoor froze. For the first time, truly froze. A flicker of raw horror flashed in his otherwise stoic eyes. Alessia Holden stepped forward, her breath shallow, heart thundering in her chest. Is that really her?" she whispered. Nicholas didn't answer. Althea began descending the staircase, her heels making no sound, as if the floor dared not acknowledge her. "Nicholas," she purred. "You look exactly as I left you, wounded and foolish." Nicholas spoke at last, his voice like steel just beginning to crack. "You burned. I saw it." "And yet," Althea said with a soft shrug, "love never truly dies. Especially not when it is betrayed." Althea walked the ballroom like a queen reclaiming her throne. The guests parted around her in terror. Some fled. Others stood frozen. The very air trembled with old magic, resurrected magic. Alessia's fingers tingled with energy. Her grimoire, even hidden away in her room, pulsed through her veins like a second heart. "You brought her back," Alessia said to Nicholas. "How?" "I didn't," he said quietly. "Some curses resurrect themselves." Althea turned to Alessia. My, the resemblance is uncanny." Her tone was amused, but beneath it, a cruel recognition glinted in her eyes. "A new vessel, then? One that doesn't scream when she touches you?" Alessia's jaw tightened. "You cursed him." "I loved him," Althea said sharply. "And he betrayed me. I offered him power. Eternity. But he chose guilt over glory." Nicholas's voice cut in, sharp and pained. "I chose mercy over madness. I tried to save you," he continued, stepping forward. "I begged you to stop. But you were already gone, Althea. That night, when they dragged you to the stake, you cursed me, not them. You used love like a dagger. And yet you still wear the scar," she replied coldly. To Alessia, Althea said, "You share my blood. And soon, my fate." Alessia clenched her fists. "I'll never become what you were." Althea's lips curled. "You already have. Haven't you felt the magic in your bones? The fire under your skin? That power was meant to destroy men like him, not cradle them in moonlight." Later, in the privacy of the conservatory, where vines had begun to bloom unnaturally from the garden's awakening, Nicholas and Alessia stood facing one another, shaken and raw. "She was the first woman I ever loved," he admitted. "But I was young. Blinded. When I saw the depths of what she had become, it was too late." "You didn't kill her," Alessia said. "No," he said bitterly. "But I may as well have. I didn't protect her. I didn't save her. And now, she's come back through you." Alessia's hands shook. "I'm not her. I would never use magic for vengeance." He stepped close, gently touching her hand. "I know. But it's not her I fear. It's what this power will do to you if it's left unbalanced." There was a moment, painful and breathless, where they stood inches apart, unable to cross that last line. The silence was thick with emotion. "I don't know how to undo any of this," Alessia whispered. "Neither do I," Nicholas said. "But I would rather be cursed again and again, than let her take you from me." From a balcony above, Baron Thorne Ashcroft stood cloaked in shadow, eyes narrowed. He had not left the ball. He had not flinched from Althea. Now, he watched Alessia and Nicholas with cold calculation, and growing heartbreak. "She's the key," he muttered under his breath. "To him. To the curse. To everything." He drew the silver dagger from beneath his coat. And returned it to its sheath. Chapter 13, The Prophecy Unearthed. The ballroom had emptied, but Ravensmoor Hall had not quieted. Althea Holden had vanished without a trace, but the energy she left behind clung to the manor like a film of ash. Paintings tilted on their own. Fires sputtered in their hearths. The air carried an iron tang of blood and magic. And for the first time since arriving, Alessia Holden felt the full weight of the legacy that had awakened within her. She was no longer just a governess. She was the key to a curse born of betrayal, and perhaps, its undoing. That night, unable to sleep, Alessia returned to the library. Her hands moved on instinct now, pulling books from shelves, tracing strange symbols in the candlelight. There was something in the library she hadn't found yet, something calling to her. She moved behind the towering bookshelves to the far wall, past dust-covered genealogies and tax ledgers. She placed her palm against a cold stone panel, and felt it shift. A narrow drawer slid open from the wall. Inside, wrapped in dark velvet, lay a scroll sealed with black wax and the symbol of a crescent moon pierced by a thorn. She broke the seal. The parchment was centuries old, its ink faded but still legible. The script shimmered faintly, responding to her touch. When blood meets shadow, and flame meets bone, the cursed shall fall, or rise as throne. The last witch of hollow flame shall choose one life to give, one curse to lose. The heart must break, or night shall reign eternal. Alessia read it 3 times. Her blood roared in her ears. This was it. The prophecy. And she was the witch. Nicholas found her there, on the floor beneath the stained glass window, scroll in hand. "You found it," he said, voice low. "You knew," she replied. "I suspected," he said. "But I've never been able to read it. The ink responds only to your bloodline." "Then it's true," Alessia whispered. "I'm the last of the hollow flame." Nicholas nodded slowly. "It means you're the only one who can end it. The curse. Me. Her. All of it." Alessia looked up at him, her voice breaking. "But it says the heart must break. One life to give." Nicholas closed his eyes. "I know." They sat together in silence, surrounded by books older than kingdoms. Alessia's thoughts spun like a storm. "How can I choose?" she whispered. "If I save you, I might lose myself. If I destroy the curse, will it destroy us?" Nicholas didn't answer. Instead, he gently reached out and took her hand. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said. "But when the blood moon rises, the choice will be yours alone." Alessia looked down at the scroll again. Flame and shadow. Blood and bone. Love and sacrifice. Everything was building to a single, impossible moment. And it was coming fast. As Nicholas helped her back to her feet, Alessia noticed a faint shimmer behind the final line of the prophecy. She held it up to the candlelight, and a hidden passage revealed itself. "Beware the kiss of false fire. The hunter wears a heart he did not earn. Trust the one who bleeds with silence." Alessia's heart stilled. The hunter. Thorn. And the false fire? Could it mean someone was using her, someone pretending love? Her breath caught. Could Thorn have feelings for her, only because of what she represented? Later that night, Alessia stood at her window. The moon above was bright and full, but already tinged with red around the edges. In a week's time, it would turn completely crimson, the blood moon. She held the prophecy close to her chest and whispered aloud. "One life to give, but whose?"
Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.